Welcome to the Devon Corner, where we discuss the world's most practical breed of cattle and the role they play in different production systems around the globe. My co-host Steve Montgomery is not currently with us, but may join us by phone. He is traveling to New York to pick up a load of cattle. And as you can tell from the t-shirt and the work hat, we're doing this on short notice. My guest today is busy like most of us. Derek Hines, his wife Amber is a board member here at Red Devon, USA. And I couldn't get Derek initially to take this contest on for us, but by going through Amber, I was able to get his arm twisted just enough. Um, Derek's studied at Cornell and does a lot in agronomy, animal science, and nutrition. And this test kind of evolved. We'll talk about that some more, but welcome, Derek. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yes.
Steve's not here, so I'll start with the blessing.
Okay.
Um, Thank you, Lord, for this beautiful day, for the much needed rain we received. Please give everyone the weather that they need. Thank you for people like Derek willing to share and open up and uh, does this for a living and gets paid, but is sharing his wisdom out of kindness and a willingness and wanting to teach and help others. May we be good stewards of our land and our forages and give people good guidance. Be with all those in need. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you, Derek. Give the better introduction of yourself and tell us a little bit about Hines Clan Farm, if you would, please.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of a long story, I guess, but about 18 years ago, we ended up buying the place we're at now, which got us out of more of a suburb kind of a house and into more of a farming area.
Which
Um,
where?
Bradford, Bradford, Maine. Uh, and then, let's see, we started trying to manage the pastures that in the hayland that we started with here. It was pretty poor shape. There'd been no reinvestment in it. Neighbor across the street had been haying it and grazing it a little bit. There was no rotational grazing. There was nothing put on. So you could walk across in a heavy dew, you could walk across this field and not get your shoes wet. It was, it was
Typical
pathetic.
overfarmed American.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't washing away because it did have, a bit of a sod, but it really wasn't healthy, wasn't being productive. So that kind of got us going. We did a little bit of hay for a couple years. We put a lot of wood ash on to try to improve the fertility. That's one of the options we have with some of the electrical generation through burning biomass that had been developed here in Maine. We've had a certain amount of wood ash available. Lime is expensive here because it has to come from either Massachusetts or New Brunswick, Canada. So it's a lot of trucking and a little bit of lime that we're buying when we do that. So um, we eventually took over a bunch of land at a farm oh, that had been downsizing and had a partner exit, had sort of abandoned. So we started with that, trying to do some crop farming. That was also fairly neglected, so we were going broke trying to do that. We ended up seeding a lot of that down and switching over to more of a forage model and working with some other guys that were taking that for feed for to some dairies. But we started doing the custom grazing here. We put in a fairly nice fence, spent the money on that. Our story is we were either going to spend the money on hay equipment or fence. We went with fence. And so we did custom grazing for a long time while we worked on paying stuff down. We just I guess started in with the Devons about 8 years ago. We started so we gradually started growing that herd and did less and less of the custom grazing until we stopped that entirely. Probably I think that's been 4 or 5 years ago since we did any custom work.
Well,
So the
with
children
cattle
have been
prices today, you timed that just perfectly.
just barely, yeah. So we're thankful for that, uh, how that worked out. Yeah, the children have been a big part of it. We've got 10 kids and they've always helped from an early age. Most of the dairy cattle we worked with were fairly safe for them to be around. We kept cattle for one of our kind of regional beef marketing groups that has a feed yard up north. We kept cattle for them for a year and a half. That's when we started to appreciate safety around cattle because most of them had a black hide and that got old.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so it was nice to get in the Devons. I had looked at them when I was in high school. It was that Moosehead herd up by Moosehead Lake, which
Hmm.
was a bit of a ride when I was a kid because we were coming from northern Maine. But at this point, we're about an hour and a half drive from there. I don't think, yeah, there's nothing there now, but we do have some of those genetic lines in some of the original cattle we got in locally here. Um, so yeah, we definitely have liked having the Devon just for that safety with the kids helping. I mean, our youngest, who's 5, likes helping on the pasture, so it's uh it's nice that she can do that safely with us. So
It is. It is.
uh, yeah,
Your
so
son Arliss continues to help the organization as well.
yeah, yeah, he's
Um,
doing a business type degree at Patrick Henry College. Looking forward to having him home in December. He's going to be getting done early, and thankfully, and help share some of the load here. Amber and George share the management of our store that we stumbled into during COVID. Right during the first week of the COVID shutdowns, we ended up with a butcher shop that we had no previous training in. Um, and really, yeah, no, yeah, it was totally unexpected. But 3 of the boys stepped forward to help with that and still worked out their notice at the dairy farm they were doing chores on. And so they're also owners. And several of the other boys work there. Not currently owners yet, but that all with good time, I guess. We'll figure that out as we go. So yeah, I
if
guess that's
somebody wants to find out more, Derek, how do we find, how does a customer find you? What's the best way? Is it through social media or website or?
uh it's Emery's Meats Brewer, I think, is the store. Um and then I think we were still working on the website here, but it's Hines Clan Farm. I think we're found in the Devon directory. Our information is
Perfect.
it. So
Perfect. Well, let's talk about this forage contest. It's
yeah,
Amber's really the one to tell the story, but in the short version, we started with a hay contest, and
yep,
through some conversations, we decided that's been done and is being done, and there's a lot out there on it. And we
yep,
said let's have a pasture contest, a forage contest, and do something that nobody else is doing, but also give people usable information. I
right,
was talking to you about it before. I'm heavily relying now on forage analysis much more than soil analysis, and I'm not down on soil analysis, but the
yep.
forage is one step closer. It's what they're actually taking in, and so it's better.
And it's so critical with most of us doing the grass finished in this Devon breed, doing a grass finished program. It's the forage quality is when that's all they're eating, that's everything, right? We're not making up for it with the easy button with grain like, a lot of you know, the beef industry does. But so,
That's why they
uh,
do it, right?
right. It's the
Because
easy
doing it
button.
on grass is hard,
Yeah,
and
it is.
growing good quality grass is
Yep.
hard. And knowing how, I mean, I'd love to do a whole nother podcast on, a cow-calf operation is very different from heifer development or finishing stockers.
Right.
Um, and I could get off track with you in a hurry. Um, but
We what you were just saying about the different types of animals and how different that is. We've learned some of that the hard way too. We've tried some things that for one reason or another just didn't work. So kind of those are the lessons you really learn. So
I In
So
my consultation work, I think I've seen a train wreck in 95% of operations. And what usually happens
yep,
is it's 5 years or 7 years and everything's great, but you're understocked and you're
yep,
just figuring it out. Its stocking rate gets up. That's usually the primary reason. And
yeah,
the wheels come off, and it's not one or two head that suffer, the whole herd
oh
suffers.
Lord, yeah, yeah,
And the
yeah,
good managers, the good stewards take that hard
yeah,
and fix it.
yeah,
And the people who go out of business don't.
right.
um,
Yeah,
but
we talked with quite a few people out west that had done the ranching for profit seminars, and we're trying to get away from hay feeding and doing these through the middle of the winter when the to avoid the hay when the snow was deep. They were grazing these annual mixes, multi-species mixes. That was our hard lesson. We
yeah,
eventually realized that all those guys were weaning the calves off and selling them before they turned the cows out onto that. So, at that point, really, the cow was just trying to maintain herself in a pregnancy and not having to lactate, not having to support a calf. There was no calf that you were trying to feed. We tried a little bit of that and found it really was not the answer in our climate. And it's hard to beat hay. I
yeah.
mean,
Well, that's a
we got a
huge
long,
part of it.
we
Every
got a long
environment's
winter.
different.
Yeah, yeah, we got a long winter, and we do run the calves on their moms for a good 8 months. And so, and with the grass finishing, we're not trying to hurry them off to a feed yard somewhere and getting top dollar. That's not our model right here. So yeah, what was working for a bunch of others didn't necessarily work when we tried it. I mean, it sounds appealing to get away from hay, but for us, it's just better to extend our grazing season as far into the winter as we can. We've routinely gotten into December. Last year was a drought year, so we didn't make it. We had to actually start feeding hay on our fall pastures just because they were really lush and tender when it finally did start raining. And so to kind of keep them filled up and stretch those pastures and not have to go into our wintering areas, it worked well to feed the dry hay with that. So yeah, we're still learning, trying to do better. We're trying a little winter rye bale, round bale silage that we're going to try to make here over the next week. We'll see how that goes. That's supposed to help with finishing cattle. As far as a lot of guys, as you go down your way, are using triticale, but we're too far north for triticale to really fit well. So it's winter rye is kind of the better fit for us. So a number of dairies in the area have been using it successfully. So we've been kind of able to learn from their experience a bit. So to give some background on like what I was looking at for making this forage test uh, pasture contest more applicable and a better way to kind of sort out what works and what doesn't, kind of leaning on my years of doing the dairy nutrition work. And if you go back, we started out just using basically calculators. We'd input all the data, and we were using some guidelines that a couple different more seasoned consultants had come up with that, so they got published in Hordes Dairyman, that sort of thing. But the reality over time was we were overfeeding the cattle most of the time. Not necessarily a problem we see as much on the grass finished world, but like I say, I'm just trying to share the background of the ideas here. Um, so I had seen the Cornell model a bit when I was going to college, and the theory made great sense, but it was very cumbersome, terribly time consuming. So nobody was using it in the field really. There was an attempt by some of the people in the Northeast at a few of the different colleges and research institutes to try to make it more user friendly. We did try that for a while, but an Italian company came out with one that's real user friendly. It's just goes by the initials NDS. And that's I was kind of slow getting onto it because the I had followed that other model, and that was, I don't know, I guess it wasn't working quite as well as advertised. But this NDS one has really started to get my attention. People kept telling me that had been using it a little ahead of me that it would predict the animal performance just spot on. and it was really allowing us to stop overfeeding and to just feed the key pieces. So I've got a lot of experience doing dairy rations, but also a lot of like growing heifer rations and beef finishing rations, beef growing rations. And it does really predict you'll get really close on what the actual animal performance is. So my thought with this contest was if we're going to make it practical and useful, then we ought to use this same technology. So that's where, with sending all these samples to Cumberland Valley, I can get a report from them that I can load directly into that program. And if I run all these forages through like a growing finishing type steer ration, or it'll predict exactly what they would grow on pounds per day on while they're on that forage exclusively. So it allows us on that pasture exclusively. So instead of just chasing the older concept of relative feed value or relative feed quality that a lot of the time didn't predict the results that we actually observed or measured, this is really the best we have for predicting performance and really seeing which pasture is going to grow cattle the best. Um, and Jeremy, we had talked earlier about just sample methodology being important. Not, if somebody's just trying to win the contest and they might just want to pick the best part of their pasture, but as far as trying to get an accurate sample, throwing the hula hoop out over a stretch that represents the average, and then taking a sample out of that area just to try to make this, more useful information that we can learn from. And if the idea is we're trying to do a better job getting a better finish on these cattle, then this would actually help us to evaluate what does and doesn't work for us. So I guess that's
Yeah, well, I
a
think I
nutshell.
mean,
Unless you think I'm missing something, please say so. But
no, just comments on what you said. I think there's certainly going to be people out there that want to show off it. I
yeah,
see value in winning the contest, right? It'd be great to say
sure,
I have the best pasture. It
yeah,
would also be great to say, man, my pasture is just running the mill compared to everybody else's, but my gains are just as good or better.
right,
So, but what I hope people will do, if you want to try to win the contest, do your thing, but send in an average, because that information's a whole lot more usable to you.
yeah,
I reached out to Amber to send me seven because I've
yeah,
got I've got warm season grasses and cool season grasses, and
right.
my typical pasture is fescue and clover. That's not going to win any contest, right? But
Except
it's
in the
probably,
winter, right? In the winter, it will.
well, in the winter as stockpiled. You're right.
Yeah,
It'll beat, but it won't beat your spring rye, right?
right.
And but it's the most accurate indicator of what my cattle are getting on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Um, I used to point people at a you talked about your work in the dairy at a website called Dairy One,
Hmm.
because it gave you an idea of what 500 and 600 pound calves needed in terms of energy and protein, and what
Sure.
800 pounds calves needed, and what a cow needed,
Yeah.
and that's, not all grasses are equal, not all cattle have the same requirements. Would speak a little bit more on that if you would. Um,
Yeah. One of the things that was kind of sorted out with the wider adoption of the that NDS model in the industry also coincided with one of the guys at Cornell kind of figuring out that one of the common denominators with whether the cattle performed like we thought they would or not was one of the like slowest to digest fiber fractions. UNDF 240 is what it's called. It's the number of hours what's left after having been in a rumen fluid to see what would digest. And that actually is the best prediction of how much we can get them to eat. And that is on our forage samples. You'll see that UNDF 240. And we want to, the closer we can get those numbers to 10, the better the cattle will eat. So if you're trying to finish cattle, you want those numbers down there. Mama cows with the calves weaned off, you can be clear out in the high teens to 20 on that number, and it won't take as much feed to fill them up because it kind of plugs them up with that fiber. But you wouldn't want to try to finish cattle on that. That's where you'd see like the poor performances. So that's actually become like the most important number on there. I mean, protein, sure, we want to see where those are at. Like mama cows can do pretty good on 7, 8, 9% protein type forages on a maintenance and even lactating. They might need a little higher for lactating, 10, 11% proteins on like a preserved forage. Whereas like on a pasture, you might be low teens for that to be comparable.
Well, even Cornell now is using that model, and there is a lot of information on the internet.
Yep.
There's even a free trial version of the software
Yep.
um, that you can download and use. So if if viewers have more questions about the specifics of the test, you can certainly go there and research it to all ends.
Sure.
Um, but the other point I want to make too is we're also drying a sample that'll be on display at the event.
Yep.
The idea being just like a hay contest, you'll walk down the line looking at each one, smelling each one. It was obviously gathered at the same time as the sample set in.
Yeah.
Um, and
Probably want to try that someplace with good airflow and sunlight, and just as soon as it gets dry, then maybe get it out of the sun. And I don't know how we're planning to preserve those, if we're just gonna keep them in the refrigerator or something to keep them from deteriorating.
we've done some videos on it, and I think it is a complicated process, but it's no
Yep.
more complicated than I'm putting square bales in my barn, and I don't want to burn my barn down.
Sure.
So
Get it dry.
you've got to manage the
Throw it down the
sample
spoil. Yeah.
as you just said. Mine's actually,
Yep.
I'm looking at it across the room. It's
Just
wrapped in
hanging
a
out.
paper towel in a manila
Yep.
envelope because it's dry, but it's not totally dry. But once a
Yep.
month, I'm going to go put my fingers on it and see if I need to do something different.
Sure.
Um, but it's
Basically get it to a dry hay one way or the other, and then kind of hold it and get it out of the sun once it's dry.
yeah, we actually
Doesn't
dried ours
bleach
in the
out,
dark to try to keep it
so it doesn't bleach.
so the
Yeah.
color was better.
Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, and it worked pretty well. I think people will
Yep.
do different things. And of course, if you're not going to be at the event, you have to mail this to Amber.
Hmm.
How you package that to keep it from getting beat up
Sure.
is going to be relative too. Now, all that said, the sample that gets sent to the lab is going to give us the numbers.
Right.
This dry sample, even if it got ruined, it's
Yeah.
just going to make the day of
Right.
a
To
little tough.
circle back on handling the fresh sample going to the lab, it's good just to get it into the Ziploc bag, squeeze the air out well as you're sealing it up, and get it frozen, and then send it on a Monday. Whether you go through the mail or UPS or FedEx, just send it on a Monday to the lab.
And we've got videos of all this that are
Good.
linked to this podcast for folks to watch.
Yep.
Um,
Because we
so
just don't want it molding on the way.
100%,
Yeah.
100%.
'Cause then that's feeding the mold's going to eat all the goodies out of it, and then we're just going to have kind of the leftover fiber that's been kind of heat damaged, and it really won't give a good sample result, if you will. So, and they do have a good database there on pastures. They do enough pasture sampling so that we can use the more economical NIR, which is like near infrared uh, tests, as opposed to the longer, slower, more expensive liquid. Sorry, wet chemistry type test. So
Perfect.
yeah,
Well,
that's
I'm also going to send you samples from each of the plots that we're doing the soil health field day on,
cool.
so we can tie that information into the work that we're
Yep.
doing there
Yep.
and see how it correlates. And um,
Sounds good.
um, a lot we can learn from this, and I sure appreciate you and Amber and the time and
Yeah,
commitment to help make this thing go.
sounds good. Well,
Well,
be
thank
interesting to
you
see
so
how it
much.
goes and learn what we can learn from it.
A
So,
hundred percent. A
yep,
100%. Well, just listening to you talk about your operation and being observant in your operation, but also of other operations around you and what's working on other farms, what other people are growing. That I mean,
yeah,
that's the key to this. And I think a lot of small farmers get so caught up in the day to day on their own operation that they quit learning, they quit looking and going out. And
right, yep,
um, it's an easy trap to fall into, but don't let yourself do it.
right.
Well,
Yep.
thank you and Amber and Arliss and the rest of the Hines clan, and have a blessed rest of your day. And thank you again.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.